So I was thinking about like what made the album successful, or well, we definitely know it struck a chord with especially Gen Z, or let's say millennial people. Um, but which chord exactly? I was trying to think about it. So when I was going through a lot of conversations around BRAT, I could also read about people bringing up recession pop. So I basically did a deep dive into it, wherein it said ki as the world leads towards recession, the beats per meter increase. This was especially seen around 2010, with a lot of Rihanna making a lot of pop hits, Lady Gaga, Empire State of Mind, for example. Then there's this Rihanna ka song which says ki we found love in a hopeless place. Then we have Katy Perry, um, who was all out with her teenage dreams. So this is basically the time wherein recession pop got to know as recession pop. But if you really look into it, we are not heading towards a recession. So why are we talking about recession pop? Or let's say, why is pop music back? Let's also talk about कि okay, pop music कब से आया? Um,
Did
so
pop
pop
ever
music,
leave for it to be back?
um, well, they say after 2019, 2024 was a very big year for pop. I think
Yeah,
it
I
is
guess,
based
yeah, that
upon
makes sense though.
sales and streams.
Actually, yeah, I guess, yeah, it makes sense because, like, I could tell that because briefly I deviated from the pop genre around after, like, during the pandemic, I started listening to, like, a lot of, like, Sufjan Stevens, Jim Morrison, Jimi Hendrix. Like, I went very niche, and I also went pretty. I went back in time and I went niche. Um, but this year, all of a sudden, I'm like, oh my god, Tyler! I'm like Sabrina Carpenter, Addison Rae. Like, yes, give me some white girl music. Uh,
Yeah.
this year, all of a sudden, even I am like, you know what? I'm kind of liking this. Yes. Uh huh. Uh huh. Uh huh. Yeah, sorry. You were making a
um,
much more profound point. But yes,
no,
yeah,
no,
I
no.
do like
I mean, it
affirming
all
what you
makes
had to
sense.
say.
There's nothing not profound. It's just that we sometimes don't see the profundity in something.
Well, sounds like you've learned something from me, Kshitij. The
But
student exceeds the master. I
thank
hope
you,
I said
master.
that right.
Okay. We were talking about कि pop कब से आया. So it started around 1950s. Before pop, jazz, and well, R&B, dance music, rock and roll was
Funk?
something that was more popular. Funk, yeah. There are like two things which, again, deviating from the topic a little bit, but I feel like talking about it. That firstly, pop music is so young.
Oh, yeah.
Like it hasn't even completed 100 years. And I was also thinking about how the perception of jazz has changed, wherein jazz was for ordinary people. And
Now
there's
jazz
this
has become very bougie.
composer. Yeah, there's that composer we both like,
Berlioz.
the producer Berlioz. He has this whole song, "Jazz is for ordinary people."
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It So, like before that, jazz and R&B was like at its peak, which is quite interesting to note. But anyways, pop music got popular, and pop music comes from the word popular music, and something which you can dance to, groove to, and well, get lost in the lyricism, I guess. So yeah, that's a little bit about pop music. But coming back to our point, wherein we are actually not heading towards recession, but well, why are we talking about recession pop, or like why is has pop made a big comeback? So there's this article dating 2022, wherein there's a economist and cultural commentator called Kyla Scanlon, who coined a new term called vibe session, which basically means it's not a recession, but the vibes are off. Um,
Ah.
like, and the reason behind
Okay.
it,
All right. All right. Sorry. Sorry. All right. Okay. So I'm sorry. This is just like वो दो मेरे दो synapses ना ऐसे ऐसे flirt कर रहे थे. So what happened was this actually brings me back to this idea that I've also been observing in fashion and otherwise of how a lot of remixing is happening in terms of aesthetics. Like, if you look at anyone's aesthetic, right? Like, not anyone, but yes, when you look at certain groups of people and their aesthetic, you can't tell if it's retro, you can't tell if it's Y2K because thoda element hai Y2K ka, but it's not quite that. Like, you can see like a lot of like comeback, mix match, a very futuristic take on something that is old, and you see a lot of that, and I see that in some sense like layering onto this vibe session because you are like recession nahi chahiye, but udhar ka like I want the music. Recession music. Let's bring back recession music. Not recession, no thank you. Just the music. So it's like it gives me a little bit of that. So it's like you pick and choose like what do you want to like, what do you want? What does
yeah,
your mood want? Something like that.
that does make a lot of sense. I feel collabs though are bigger than ever now.
Oh
And the
yeah.
most random collabs, like Sabyasachi Manish Malhotra collaborating with Starbucks for cups.
Oh yeah, that. And like speaking of collabs, hold on. Okay, speaking of not just collabs, like going back, like like the whole nostalgic aspect, I see like I hardly see Bollywood make good new music anymore. They're just recycling old stuff. And like I recently watched Bhool Bhulaiya 3 and I'm like, you are literally doing nothing with the music. Like literally nothing. It's the same track. And I watched Bhool Bhulaiya 2, I'm like, literally nothing new. Like literally the same track. You're just adding like a few beats to the OG. The OG is like amazing. And you're adding like a few beats to that and you're just repurposing it. And I think almost every movie would have at least one or two repurposed songs if my observation is not entirely off. Like at least whatever I have seen so far, कुछ ना कोई एक गाना repurpose करके एक extra beat डाल के they just sell it to you.
Or sometimes it's a very old classic that they completely give a modern take to.
Yeah, yeah, that is something that I've been seeing. But sorry, go on. It's just my synapses do this thing, and I'm like, huh.
Um, okay, too many points in my head.
Too many points,
Um,
na?
yeah. So I was basically tracking as to what is charting
Okay.
in India in terms of music. Um, and something we talked about on our part one episode, wherein we were talking about religion adjacent things that are on the rise now, music being a very important one. Um, for a long time, I feel like I didn't get the complete appeal of hip hop.
Oh
Um, for a long time, I didn't.
yeah.
Um, and then I feel like I came across a few articles which gave me an interesting take on it. The first one was about the imagery, wherein, well, hip hop has like black roots, right? Like, or let's say, black artists have pioneered that. So whenever we see the visuals, or let's say even with the lyrics, we find a lot of, let's say, talking about expensive brands or talk about money or like just leading a hedonistic life. Or I don't want to say hedonistic, but let's say a life filled with pleasure, right? Be it any kind. Um, and basically, that imagery has been there because for a very long time in history, black people were not able to access this, let's say,
Yeah.
probably the expensive brands or the lifestyle that they kind of portray. So it's their way of saying as to how they have control now, which is actually very interesting. And I think there's a lot of power in it. Ki, oh, like, we are at that level now, and then we have kind of overcome all of your, BS that you guys kind of brought on the table. So I feel that is one interesting perspective. And secondly, then I was thinking about hip hop music in general and bringing back the religion adjacent point. So when you look at the lyrics, it makes you feel on top of the world, like Empire State of Mind. What is that? Like you're literally on top of the world in terms of everything. And connecting it back to what's charting on Indian charts. I don't want to bring up Western charts again because everyone talks about it, and there's a lot of data already.
And you literally
But let's
just
say
spoke
thinking
about
about,
BRAT.
I did, but okay, I'm trying to bring the conversation
just saying,
back.
just saying.
Yeah. So you see a lot of Punjabi hip hop
Yeah.
charting. I feel there are two reasons. First, hip hop ka appeal, general appeal of there being power, and secondly, I feel through years of portrayal, be it through Bollywood films, especially Punjabi culture as a whole, is seen as a hyper masculine or very like power culture. I feel in terms of everything, and when you combine something like that, which has that big of an image, with something again very powerful as hip hop, it gives you an extra powerful feeling. And then again, I feel like it really makes sense when you talk about vibe session and how you would want to be the dada in your area. You would want to be like hato, chalo sab hato when I walk down the street, mere charche, like just those vibes. And I feel like it's really fun. Like when you do listen to it, you do feel that. You're like, yeah, I am the dada, bro. Like just you can go off. Like, it's my ilaka, my territory, my area. So maybe it's just my bedroom, but it is my area,
Lol.
mera ilaka. Maybe it's just me screaming at top of my lungs in my own bedroom. But yeah, like, it helps me escape for that point in like for that amount of time whenever I do engage with it. So I think that's my theory as to okay, why does like Punjabi hip hop perform so well, even in terms of sales and like concerts. But yeah, coming back to vibe session, one of the reasons that this whole phenomenon came into existence was um, COVID happened, right? And when COVID happened, a lot of people were working from their home, or maybe a lot of people didn't work because of like harsh realities, harsh conditions. They lost their jobs, but in every case scenario, people did get a lot of time to themselves and apne apne ghar par. And that gave them that gave them a lot of time in terms of introspecting as to what they actually like, what gives them happiness, what they like to do, what gives them the most fulfillment really. And so during the COVID time, people became a lot more aware about themselves than ever before. But lockdown khatam ho gaya, we resumed back to our lives. And when we did, everyone resumed back with a hyper sense of what they want out of life or what they like. And it became extremely difficult to integrate back into the same working environments.
Right.
Even though, let's say, we can say, some percentage shifted to a hybrid setting or an online setting, but well, it didn't change a lot about, let's say, the work environment or the work that they were doing or the work that they might be stuck in.
Mm.
So that basically put people into, let's say, the vibes are off kind of space, wherein they know they have to get with their lives and keep going as they were. Not everyone had the opportunity or the chance to kind of completely take a new direction
Mm.
in terms of everything. So, well, that was, from what I read, was one of the very important reasons as to why vibe session came into place. Do you have any thoughts on that? And
I
if not,
mean,
I'll go ahead because I
not
have a lot more. But yeah, just taking a
not
break.
vibe session per se, but yes, I do see like concert culture coming in aggressively, like aggressively towards the end of, like, I think since November, December, and now in January, so many events are happening, and I do think that, like, I don't think I've witnessed, um, like, probably it's just my perception because of Coldplay, but it's not just Coldplay. It was Maroon 5. It's Ed Sheeran. It's cigarettes after sex. Like, there are so many people coming to India, and there was Dua Lipa, and it's been crazy. And I don't think, um, like, this has something that we see. This is something that we saw as much before this, and it does have a lot to do with, you know what, like people generally want to go and be out and about because of the pandemic partially, and also because of, let's say, um, we have now entered the workforce. So people who were generally studying during the pandemic are now more or less people who have entered the workforce and who have disposable income. And I think there is also like a surge in demand for concert or concert adjacent experiences, which is why this is something that's happening. So yeah, this is something that, like, it's crazy, like the number of, like like I think it's been a very very musical year, and music specifically has affected so many, um like, you can't isolate music, yes, but like the inherent relationship between music and fashion, music and consumption patterns, music and memes, it's just it's just crazy. like I think this year witnessed that in a very substantial sense of the word, like the impact of music,
Mm.
like
I do see
it was
everything
very
turning very
multidimensional.
experiential.
Experiential,
Sorry?
yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, it's like it was a very multi-dimensional impact of music, like even, like music being incorporated into textiles and whatnot, like a lot of different, um, lot of different avenues where music came back. And weirdly, I wasn't as much in touch with music in the first half of the year, and by the time the second half of the year rolled in, I'm just listening to music almost every single day, and I begin my day with music, and even I feel a lot more connected. And it's also because I see a lot of patterns around me that are connected to music. So it's been a very interesting year for music, to say the least.
I agree. Yeah. Um, I have one point to say about like the whole concert thing. I know some people who basically attended concerts not really knowing the artist, but they attended it for the vibes.
Oh yeah, for sure. A lot of people. Like even my
Yeah.
friend who's going to an Ed Sheeran concert right now, she doesn't really know all. She is not really entirely familiar with his discography, but she's just going because, yay, Ed
Even
Sheeran.
with Coldplay, when let's say before the tickets were sold, everyone was basically like discussing, ki, oh, should we book, should we not book? I feel one of the most heard things that I said, which were trying to support कि okay नहीं तुम ये खरीदो was that कि oh Coldplay concert is like an experience and there's
Yeah.
a lot going on beyond music and again I keep hearing this word like experience like vibe very 360 it's going now
Yeah,
like
right. Yeah.
it has shifted from just the music.
Yeah. It's a very multi-sensorial experience.